Moms, how many of those just checked a few too many boxes? No joke, we had a half-eaten waffle in our car this week, and it was like, really? Like, we just watched this video, and we check almost all those boxes, unfortunately. It's not a good thing. But happy Mother's Day. We want to pray over you here in just a few moments, but we are so grateful for you. We're so grateful for your sarcasm, too. Like, it makes life really, really, really good. But today, we're in this series called Enough, and it's this idea. We have this heart, this burden, this passion to end this thinking that we all battle that I'm not enough. And we've been following the story of a man named Moses, and Moses would go on to do one of the most amazing things any human being has ever done. He would lead 3 million people out of 430 years of slavery into this promised land. But before he does that, Moses has this battle. He has this internal battle, this internal struggle that we all have at times. And it's this belief, this thought that he's not enough. And we get to see it played out through the pages of Scripture. I mean, for thousands of years, people have been watching his internal struggle. But the reality is, if you're at all like me, there's a lot of things that line up to his struggle, his challenge. Moses finds himself in this place where he's made some of the greatest mistakes of his life. And for the past 4 decades, he's been sitting on the outcome of these mistakes. He's 80 years old. He's past his prime, but not past the time that God could use him. And he finds himself in the middle of a desert. He's a shepherd, but not shepherd to his own sheep. He's working for his father-in-law, doesn't even have enough money to buy his own sheep. And God meets him in this place. God begins to speak to him through a bush, and he's in this place of really being in a desert, not just in terms of the climate and the physical typography, but in his own life. And if you find yourself in a place of being in a desert today, this message is for you. Because that's where Moses was. He was in this place of just the wasteland. And God reveals this incredible plan to Moses. He says, Moses, I'm going to use you to bring about freedom to all of my people. And Moses' response is not, yes, God, here I am. It's, who am I? Who am I to be used by you? Who am I to live out your plan? God, who am I to be a leader to anyone? I'm barely leading sheep, and now you're going to say that I'm going to lead people? Who am I to do that? And Moses misses the moment. I don't know about you. I've had so many of these moments in my life where I've been in the middle of something significant, and I didn't even see it. I totally missed the moment. I mean, far too many times, I love to even admit I've missed the moment. I've missed the moments in life. And Moses misses the moment, and he asks this question, who am I? And that's not a bad question at all. It's just not the question that we start with. The question that we're to start with is not who am I, it's who are you? God, who are you? Because when we start with that question, we begin to end the thinking that we're not enough. When we start to ask the question of who is God, and we begin to discover his greatness, his power, his authority, his goodness, his faithfulness, the hope and the love and the peace and the life that he brings, church, it takes us to a whole other place. It frames up everything differently for us. So when we start there, God moves. And God's response to Moses' question of who am I, God doesn't even answer the question, but he responds to Moses. And he tells Moses who he is. He says, I am who I am. And that's more than just a play on words. That phrase, that statement God is saying is, I am one without equal. If you were to put God in an equation, it says God and then equal, and then have something blank, that there's nothing that can fill that other side of the equation. Nothing is equal to God. And here's what we know today, because God has no equal, he says to Moses, I'm going to lead my people out of slavery. God, Moses, because I have no equal, I'm going to use you to do it. Moses, because I have no equal, the most powerful person on planet Earth named Pharaoh is not going to stand a chance as to what I'm going to do. I have no equal, and because I have no equal, Moses, you're going to help bring about history. They're going to be talking about you 2,000 years, 4,000 years, 5,000 years, 6,000 years later in Round Rock, Texas. You've never been there, Moses. It's okay. It's a great place to live. Just got voted the best city in the country, right? God says, because I am who I am. I want to pick it up here, verse 17 of Exodus chapter 3. It says, the elders of Israel will listen to you. God is talking to Moses. He says, listen, the first thing he says, the elders of Israel will listen to you. Then you and the elders are to go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Let's take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand compels him. So I will stretch out my hand and strike the Egyptians with all the wonders that I will perform among them. After that, he will let you go. And I will make the Egyptians favorably disposed toward this people, so that when you leave, you will not go empty-handed. Every woman is to ask her neighbor and any women living in her house for articles of silver and gold and for clothing, which you will put on your sons and daughters. And so you will plunder the Egyptians. God says, Moses, the elders are going to listen to you. I'm going to go with you, and they're going to respond favorably, and you're going to have favor on your life. You're going to go, and they're going to follow you. They're going to listen to you. There's going to be favor there. And then you're going to go to Pharaoh, and listen, Moses, it's not going to go down without a fight. But I'm telling you right now, you're going to have the victory. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a walk through the park, right? But it's going to be worth it. And the outcome is going to be me. I'm going to move in a way, Moses, listen, I'm going to move in such a way that not only are you going to find freedom, Moses, you're going to hit the lottery on your way out. You're going to be given all kinds of things. You're going to take the riches of a nation, the wealthiest nation in the world, and you're going to take their riches with them. Your kids, Moses, your kids are going to be walking out in Gucci. They're going to be walking out in Armani. They're going to be walking out in Off-White. They're going to be covered in jewelry. Moses, I'm not just going to give you freedom. I'm going to bless you to the point of great wealth. And you think Moses would just be like fired up by that, right? You think he'd be saying, okay, God, let's go. Where are my sandals at? Because I know I'm standing on holy ground. I got to get my sandals. Can I take that branch that's still burning, and can that be like the torch that I just run back to the nation with, right? God, let's run through a wall together. Let's go do it together, God. But this is Moses' response. This is what he says. Verse 1 of chapter 4. What if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, the Lord did not appear to you? Then the Lord said to him, what is in your hand? A staff, he replied. The Lord said, throw it on the ground. Moses threw it on the ground, and it became a snake, and he ran from it. Then the Lord said to him, reach out your hand and take it by the tail. So Moses reached out, and he took hold of the snake, and it turned back into a staff in his hand. This, said the Lord, is so that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. Thursday, I had the opportunity to chaperone my daughter on a field trip. And I've not been able to do this all year long. I was looking forward to it all week. And we went to the Bullock Museum in Texas, which is, it's fascinating. I love Texas history. I could have probably spent 2 days there, right? We had 2 hours. I could have spent 2 days. I'm reading everything. And she's been studying Texas state history all year long. And so she and her little friend that I'm chaperoning, they're telling me all this stuff. I mean, they're just downloading information to me. And I love our state. I mean, it's like, it's in my bones. Bury me in Texas. I love living here. I love everything about the state, maybe almost to an unhealthy place. Like, I love where I live. And I'm just fascinated. And the field trip ends. They're supposed to go back to school, but I'm able to sign her out if I want to. And so we might have left. We might have played hooky the rest of the day. Might have had a father-daughter date. Might have got some ice cream. And she's in this really fun stage of life where she's wanting to know more about other people. So she's engaging, and she's asking questions. And she's not just asking like basic questions. She's asking open-ended questions. And so she's like, Dad, what was your favorite part about this whole museum? I was like, man, that's a great question. There was so much. I said, I think my favorite part, though, was the part like right up to and during and after the Alamo. She goes, why? I said, because there was something that was born in that season. There was an independence that just, the Republic of Texas. I'm like, babe, like if our country goes south, we're going to become our own nation. We're going to be just fine, right? I'm kidding. Some of you are looking at me. Some of you from California are looking at me like, what are you saying right now? I said, there's something about Texans that just, they have no give up in them. Like there's just something about that. I said, they go through this horrific loss, this horrific defeat, and it spurs on something in them to say, we're gonna rally, and we're not gonna stop. Those people, those men, they didn't give their life in vain. We are gonna find freedom. I said, there's something about the independence that just, it strikes something in me. She goes, cool. She goes, I know your least favorite part in the whole day. I said, what was that? She goes, when we were watching that movie, and they were talking about the cowboys and all the wild things the cowboys did and how those certain group of cowboys came across a rattlesnake den and they shoved dynamite down the den and they blew it up and it was raining snakes. My daughter knows me. I hate snakes. I hate snakes. I would have had Moses' same reaction. I would have ran from that snake. Last time we had a snake in our yard, I walked into my closet, grabbed my shotgun, and I'm walking out to this pretty big snake, and my wife reminds me, we live in an HOA. You cannot shoot guns off in the HOA. I hate snakes. That's my least favorite of all the miracles that Moses got to perform. But God said, Moses, I want you to see something. I'm going to take an everyday object. I'm going to show you how powerful I can move through a stick. Why? Because God wanted Moses to see how powerful he could move through an actual person. If God can do that with a stick, can you imagine what he can do with an actual human being? God says to Moses, I want you to see if you're willing and you're able and you're ready and you're hungry. If I can do that with a stick, if I can transform a stick into a serpent and then back into a stick, can you imagine what I can do with a shepherd? Can you imagine what I can do with a leader? Yeah, you've just been leading sheep, but guess what? You're going to lead people now. 3 million of them, and you're going to lead them to freedom. So Moses, get ready. It's just a glimpse. It's just a picture of what I can do if you say yes to me. It's a picture of God's power. It's a picture of God's goodness. And Moses' response is this. 2 words. What if? God, what if? What if? 6 letters. 2 words, what if? And the what if is in response to fear. The what if of fear. God, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if it all goes wrong? You know what Moses is saying to God? What he's actually saying to God is, God, what if you're wrong? See, God already told him he was going to do this. He said that the elders are going to listen. Pharaoh eventually will let everyone go. God already guaranteed it. Moses' fear leads him to a point where he questions God and says, God, what if you're wrong? Now, I know we're all like, we would never do that, but sometimes we do that. God, what if? What if this doesn't happen? What if that doesn't happen? God, what if it doesn't work out? Moses is thinking, man, I'm an old man. I'm 80 years old. I've been in the desert for the last 40 years. God, what if? What if they think I'm crazy? I've been talking to sheep for 4 decades. That's a lot of UV rays coming at me for 4 decades. What if they think, man, Moses has lost it. He went from talking to sheep, now he's talking to bushes. Like, this is not the guy we want us leading, right? God, what if you're wrong? It's the response of fear. I love what Charles Swindoll said. He said he was so worried about what might happen, he didn't hear God telling him what would happen. Man, I've had a lot of those moments, church. I've had a lot of those moments where I've just been so consumed by fear that I've missed what God wanted to do, how God wanted to move. I've had seasons of fear that have just set me back. And I was stuck. I was stranded because of fear. I was paralyzed by fear. As I was thinking about this last week, the one thing that always got me out of those seasons of fear, those moments when I was just consumed by fear, was always something so simple. When I chose to put my eyes back on God. I chose to say, God, I'm going to take the faith that I have in my life, and rather than letting fear hold it back, and fear robbed me of this faith that is your faith. It's to be put in you. God, I'm going to put that faith back in you. Here's what we know. Fear will never end the thinking that we're not enough. If you're wrestling with that today, if you're wrestling with the idea, the reality of I'm not enough, listen, fear will never help you overcome that. Only faith will. Only faith in God will. And so just like there's two sides to every coin, there's two sides to this what if question. The other side is what if faith, right? What if fear, but then what if faith? What if God, you're really gonna do what you said you're gonna do? Like, what if the possibilities? What if the outcome? What if the reality? God, you said you're gonna do this. What if you actually do this? Like, what could happen? What could take place? The possibilities, the excitement, it's all endless. Proverbs says it so well. In Proverbs 3, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. I don't know this for sure, but I think sometimes, most times, our own understanding is fear. Like, we lean on our own understanding, which is fear, right? Like, it's just, and what happens? When we lean on our own understandings of fear, we fall. But Proverbs says, lean not on your own understandings, in all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. That's what he commits to doing. He's going to make these paths straight. God says, if I am who I am, if I have no equal, then yeah, you can bet everything that I'm going to do what I'm going to do. So if God has no equal, why and how could we worship anything else? If God has no equal, how could we follow anything else? If God has no equal, how could we surrender our lives to anything other than him? If God has no equal, how could we choose fear over faith? He has no equal. But when we make this decision, it impacts everything for our lives. I believe this. I believe your destiny is tied to how you respond to fear or to faith. I believe that. I believe the way that you respond to fear or faith will shape the outcome of your life. Not just here on earth, but for all of eternity. Will you choose God? Will you choose him? Will you surrender? You're here today because you said, God, I'm choosing you over some sleep. I'm choosing you over whatever it would be, an early brunch. I'm choosing you over everything else. God, I'm choosing you today. And can I just tell you, it's the best choice that you'll ever make. I talk to people all the time. I talked to someone this week, and they texted me on Monday, and they said, man, I have a better Monday because I was at church yesterday. It's going to impact your Monday. It's going to impact your week, but it's going to impact your life when you choose God and faith over fear. You know who's really good at having faith? It's moms. I'm not just saying this because it's Mother's Day. Like, I think about so many people. We gathered before the service to pray. I'm looking around the room, and I'm thinking, man, that person's mom is a person of faith. That person's mom is a person of faith. I'm just looking around the room as we're praying. I'm thinking, man, I got to meet so-and-so's mom. And not everyone, but moms have faith. For many of us, our moms were the ones that taught us how to pray. Every night as they're tucking us in, they're praying for us. For some of you, it was that moment where you walked downstairs for breakfast and there was your mom almost every morning reading her Bible with that giant cup of coffee that said mom. Maybe it said world's best mom. But it was consistent every day. Some of you, your moms worked 2 jobs, but you said, we're not missing church. We're going to be at church every Sunday. And the faith that it instilled into your life. For me, outside of, my mom and my dad, they have had the most significant impact in my life. Most significant spiritual impact in my life. I don't know where I'd be if it wasn't for them continuing to invite me and encourage me to follow Jesus. And they did all the things. They made sure that, man, we were in church, but that we weren't like, we had 6 church services growing up, 5 church services. How many do we have? 6. Making sure we didn't get burnt out on church on the other side of it, right? Every summer going to camp. You have an opportunity, if your teenagers are here, get them to camp. It will change I don't just say that, it will truly change their life. Change my life. My parents taught me how to follow Jesus. My mom taught me how to pray. If you know my mom, she's a prayer warrior. She loves to pray. But it's not just that. You see, if you met my mom early in her life, you would have met a woman who battled fear. And she's told me the stories again and again and again and again, how she has battled fear over everything. She'd wake up in the morning fearful. She'd go to bed fearful. But she continued to lean into God and said, I'm not going to ask the what if in terms of fear. I'm going to ask the what if in terms of faith. What if? And that faith, that choice has led to a greater faith. I was thinking about it last night. I was thinking, man, not only has it impacted my faith and my wife's faith, but my kids' faith. They have a greater faith because of the faith of their grandma. Every time they're around their grandma, they're like, that's a woman of God. That's a woman of faith. Many of you now are becoming grandmas, and your grandkids are going to experience the same thing. My kids have a greater faith because of their grandma, but they also have a greater faith because of their mom. When we moved here, my wife was a beauty blogger, and she started this blog, and it led to some marketing things, and about 5 years ago, she went to work for a startup company, and she was just faithful to it. I mean, she worked so hard. I mean, she never had a week off. There was a few years ago, we went on family vacation to Yellowstone, and her boss called and said, it's an emergency, it's a 5-alarm fire, and she goes, well, I'll talk to you in a few days. We're going into the park, and there's no reception. He said, no, I need you to stay outside the park. He said, if you don't, you're going to lose your job. My wife made a very difficult decision. She missed out on Yellowstone to provide for her family. Last week, we were praying. We were talking to the Lord, and we were sensing this season was to come to an end for this client. And you have to know this, like this is a lot of income for our family. And she has other clients, but it's a step of faith. And as we were talking and praying, I just sensed the Lord say, she's got to go. And she started a creative agency. It's called If Creative. Stands for Idea Factory. But the tagline is, what if? And I was in my office and I'm working on this message and I hear her in the other room and she's having to defend something. And in marketing, AI is a really big thing right now and it probably will be for the rest of our lives. And she's been taking these classes on AI and she's having to defend herself. And she's kind of like the thought leader at her company for this. And she's having to defend herself. And she gets off the phone and I walk out and we've been talking about this. I said, I think it's time. I think it's time for you to end things with this client. And we just prayed in the kitchen. She said, I'm going to do it. I said, you got to do it. It's a step of faith, babe. It's a big step of faith. But what if, right? What if? I said, the name of your company is If Creative. What if is the tagline. This is what I'm preaching on this weekend. What if? So guess what she did? She opened up AI and she wrote her letter of resignation. She sent it off. What if? That what if will have an impact on what you're going to do, your future, your fate, your decision. What if fear? And here's the thing about fear. Fear always seems in the moment to kind of comfort us, right? It always seems comfortable. It always seems like, okay, I'm playing it safe by staying here. But what if fear robs us of our future? It robs us of truly living our lives. Moses, just play it safe. Stay with the sheep. Ride off into one more sunset. It's safe here. Or Moses, you can go. A few weeks ago, some of our leadership gathered to pray, and we were just praying about our home and praying about our home for our church and some things that we're in the process of pursuing. And I'm sitting right here. I'm just on a chair, like literally, like right here. And as we're praying, the Lord brought me back to a picture. And it was this picture of someone that someone had shared recently at an event I was at. And they said this. They said, people tend to live one of two lives. They tend to live on the merry-go-round, which is really safe. And it's just the same thing, just over and over and over, and it just, got that music. Or they choose to live on a roller coaster. It's not as quote unquote safe, but man, it's an adventure. And as I'm sitting here, right here, I flashed back to this moment when we took our kids to SeaWorld when they were young. And they love the merry-go-round. And we're on this merry-go-round, and it was good for about 8 seconds, right? I'm watching their faces. I'm having fun because they're having fun. And we're going around this thing, and we do a lap, and then another lap, and then another lap. I start looking around like, what else can we go on? Like, what other rides are out there? Like, what else can we experience? And at the end of the day, as they're all asleep in the stroller, my wife turns to me, she's like, okay, let's go. And we go to the fun side of the park. She goes, you go first. I'm like, no, you go first. I sit there with the kids. She gets on the roller coaster. And then she comes down, I get on the roller coaster. And it's this awesome roller coaster. I forget what's like, Steel Eel, right? And you just go up over the park, and like the sun setting, you can see San Antonio. You can almost see Austin from like that point in San Antonio. It's just so far up there. And you get to the top, and I always sit in the front because it's like the best seat. And you go over the top, and it's just that sheer drop off. And it's amazing. And you just want to experience every second of it. And you hit that bottom, you're like, wow, and you come back up, and it's just like, this is exhilarating. You don't want the ride to end. I do this weird thing on roller coasters, I laugh. Like, I laugh uncontrollably. I can't help it, I just laugh. It's so alive, it's so invigorating, it's incredible. In that moment, you know you're living. You get off the ride, and you're like, is my wife watching? I'm gonna do it one more time. Moses could have stayed on the merry-go-round. He just could have been another day in the desert with some sheep. Or he could make the choice to move, to get off the merry-go-round, to say yes to God, to get on that roller coaster. And as we're praying over our church, I'm sitting right here, and God brings me to this spot, this moment, this place. He says, missions at a crossroads. Not that we've been on a merry-go-round, but we can play it safe. And man, we can step out in even greater faith. And I believe the season and the home and the chapter in front of us is going to require great faith for us as a church. I don't think there's anything better that we could possibly do with our lives. Taking that step of faith, saying yes to God. I'm excited we're doing it together. We're going to need a few more cars on that roller coaster because God keeps growing this church, and it's going to be a great season ahead of us. But I want to conclude with this. What if fear always leads to this question? What if I had done blank? What if I had done blank? Because what happens is we look back and there's regrets. What if I had done more? What if I had said yes? What if I had gotten off the merry-go-round and gotten onto the roller coaster? What if fear always leads us to great regrets, you guys? And I think regret is like a cancer to your soul. I don't have a lot of regrets, but I would look back on regrets. I'm like, oh, I'd give anything to do that differently. Anything. It's like this. What if fear leads to, whoa, it's that picture of a head down emoji. It's like, oh man, I regret this and I hate this. I'm like, oh, I just wish. But what if faith leads to the other kind of woe, right? It's like, man, God, can you imagine? And that's the kind of life that God's inviting us into, to live by faith. To have this mind-blowing experience, greater than anything you could have imagined, greater than anything you could have hoped for. To say yes to Him, to trust Him. So what are those areas today that you just need to step out in greater faith in? What are those areas that you've just been living in fear? What if fear? And God's saying today it's time to step out into greater what if faith. Maybe you've said yes to Jesus, to following him, but he says, now I'm taking you into the promised land. I'm taking you in to do something greater than you could have ever imagined. And you're saying, who am I? Who am I? And God says, no, it's now. Now is the time. Now is the moment. Let's go. Let's do this. No more delaying. No more fear. No more uncertainty. No more doubt. It's time to move into what I have for you. The very first Mother's Day message I ever preached was here at Mission. It was on Mother's Day, 2015, May 10th, 2015. And I preached this message called Faith Like a Mom. And it's funny because of all the things I could have talked about, I talked about this man, Moses. But I didn't really talk about him. I talked about his mom, Jochebed. I made fun of her name last week. I'm sorry for that. I regret that. Her name means Yahweh is glory. God is glory. I was thinking about that this week, and I thought, man, the outcome of this man's life, and he had a mom of great faith. He had a mom who would say, you know what? I know the new law is that I need to kill my baby boy, but I'm going to get it really creative in terms of saving him. And she built a raft, and she saved her son. She took the greatest step of faith. She could have lost her life. Her whole family could have been killed. It wasn't just her son. If she disobeyed, her whole family could have been killed. Yet she chose to live with faith, to say, not what if fear, but what if faith. Fast forward 8 decades. And God is inviting Moses to have the same faith his mom had. When we make a choice to live in faith, guess what we're saying? We're saying God is glory. To God be the glory. There's no greater way that we could ever live than to live with faith. To say, God, I want you to be given all the glory because the goal of my life is to bring you glory. So when I step out in faith, I'm glorifying you. Today, my question for you is, what kind of life are you going to live? Your destiny is tied to how you respond, either in faith or fear. How are you going to respond today? Today, I want to pray for all of the women in the room.